Jim. He followed up that story with another article the next day when 30 to 40 people came out here in search of the monster. They wanted to figure out what was going on. They were up in arms, ready to try to find it and get to the bottom of it. So because of that number of people, it could be any number of things. Some people think it was pranksters, high school kids trying to play a joke, and maybe some of those things did happen, but does it account for the totality of the story of the Lake Worth Monster? It's hard to say. It's so far removed, 55 years old. There's not really many living people connected to it all at this point. But the next day, the article came out, Satyr Day, and satyrs are the Greek mythological creature that's a goat person, right? Satyr Day outing next, and it says, police residents observed but can't identify a monster. And you can see this picture. It doesn't really look exactly the same, but that bridge up there, sometimes referred to as the bluff, something was spotted up there from 30 to 40 people who were down here in this area, which they call the pit, this big area here. And they described seeing this creature or something or someone moving back and forth, and then suddenly a tire was hurled down, and some people say numbers of 400 feet up in the air or toward them. And this is an interesting 2-page article here. If you guys are interested in looking closer, I can give you a closer look. But some people say, like a naturalist here at the Fourth Nature Center said, it all was chalked up to a bobcat that had been gone missing. So this is kind of a cool picture that was taken right here where we're standing of that bridge where supposedly the Lake Worth Monster threw a tire at some 30 to 40 people, which, by the way, is almost probably one of the most numbers of people when it comes to cryptid sightings. Usually it's just 1, 2, 3, however many few people. But now we have 30 to 40 people all describing that they had witnessed this, and it wasn't just a funny haha. Some people were really scared and tried to drive out. Someone crashed into a tree. I mean, so if it was a bobcat, yeah, it can be scary, but it's going to scare 30 to 40 people away. And bobcats aren't nearly the size of a person. And this thing was described as being 7 feet tall, hundreds of pounds, gray or white hair or fur, scales, horns. So it's hard to say these days because of how far removed it is in history, but it's important to acknowledge that it was documented half a century or more ago at this point, and it's important that we can continue to look at this and celebrate our interesting, lesser-known Texas history. Yeah?
Do you know what month it was happening?
July.
And then you think maybe the Goatman and Bigfoot are related, but they're different colors because they're in different areas?
That's a good observation. Some people consider that maybe it was more like what people describe as Bigfoot rather than a goat person. So is it because maybe there were things protruding out of its head, or it was adorned with something, maybe it put something on its head, or there was just some debris and people got a glimpse of something they thought were horns? These are good questions that we can speculate on, but there's a contingent that people do consider that maybe it was more like a Bigfoot creature. If you guys get a chance, go chat with Lyle Blackburn at his table over at the activity area, and he's got a whole section in his book that I pulled out earlier about that, because it makes you wonder, this isn't an isolated, if we're dealing with something that stands out as like a biped, a bipedal creature is something that moves and walks on 2 legs, whereas a quadruped would be like our furry friends here with us today. So, if we have hundreds of pounds holding biped creatures that are 7+ foot tall, that sounds a lot like Bigfoot. And that's, one of the interesting things is that Texas is full of Bigfoot reports, especially in east of Texas, but also around the Trinity River and in, around different places that people don't really consider, because we often think of Bigfoot or Sasquatch being in the Pacific Northwest up in Washington, Oregon, Northern California. But people are describing very similar things down here in the South, and is there a relationship? I mean, there's one. And people have a lot of ideas about what these potential creatures could be, if they're even, biological at all, or whatever's going on. If they are animals, in any sense of the way we think about wildlife, then it's probably a viable population. They have to be able to get around and survive, so they can't just stay hidden forever. They have to go out, and that's unfortunate, because we know wildlife, due to scarcity, is forced into other situations, which is sometimes why we see a lot of things like bobcats in the city. and they might not really want to be in those areas, but it's one of those things that makes us think, could this be due to encroachment? And we have to think, well, what can be done in the event that we do finally say we've discovered one? We can finally say and confirm that they are real. Now what? What do we do? Conservancy, wildlife protection. A lot of really interesting questions have been proposed about what do we do after the fact that something will be announced to the world. So in science, it's interesting to consider that the idea of discovery is not the same as the declaration of what happens. You know, things can be discovered, but that doesn't mean it's immediately announced to the world. Things have to be redundant or being verified over and over. And it's an interesting situation. It's not always scientists. I mean, even if you're not a degree scientist, you can still do science. You can be what we call a citizen scientist and help to contribute to the greater base of knowledge in society. And I think that's what we're all doing here today. We're taking part in a historical field research outing, and I think it's cool that we can just keep in mind this is something that people were doing half a century ago to try to make sense of something that didn't really fit into the current paradigm of our world at that time. And now we're a little bit more open-minded. We can think maybe there's something more to it, maybe there's still answers to be found, and who knows, maybe in 50 more years we'll have, you know, better, more definitive answers and maybe more mysteries as well. So I want to thank you guys for taking part in this hike. You know, there's a lot of other great activities. Definitely go check out all the authors and speakers here today, all the fun things. You can throw the tire and do the tire toss, just like the Goat Man Lake Worth Monster did at all those people that one day, July 11th, 1969. And I will say that the following few months, especially in November, the sightings kind of peaked. That's when Sally Ann Clark had her book out. It's kind of a hard find book, but she describes a lot of the other witnesses that didn't make the newspapers. So, you know, that's an interesting idea, is that people that describe things don't always get reported, and it makes us wonder all the people who had things happen that never went out of their way to tell anybody because of ridicule or however, you know, embarrassment, whatever it could be. So, you know, it's good that we can have a supportive network of people that are open-minded to these things that we can share about in the event that something does happen. I myself have never considered that I've had a sighting like you know, one of these creatures, but I think it's important that we can support people, whatever they're going to share, whether they actually had something happen, whether they perceived it in their own mind, whether they're convinced that they had something happen or not. I think it's important that we can hear them out and record their testimony, and that's, you know, a good way of moving forward either way. So at some point, I hope that this sign has been here for probably about three or 4 years now. I think it's due to the fact that the Bluff Ridge area up there is somewhat, you know, it's kind of on shifting ground. If you try to go over there, and I'm not saying, you know, don't do it, obviously the park or the nature center is saying it, but if you happen to venture off over there, you'll see it's very sandy. You know, you might lose your footing, so be careful with whatever you're doing out in this beautiful place. Again, I've never seen any alligators. These guys said they've seen some. You guys were saying there might be some like that have been seen off over on that side. So there's signs saying beware of them, you know, but you might as well be aware of the deer that are running around the road all the time anyway. So, you know, keep your eyes open, your mind open, get your cameras out, and just appreciate and enjoy nature and wildlife. And again, my name's Daniel. If you guys want any of the copies of the prints that I have here, I'd be glad to. We're going to be back over here, check out some of the talks and the other things going on. But thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
L.A. Kendrick, Wraith War, out here trying to promote the book, you guys. Yeah, have a good one. Be back later.